Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from Toronto, Consensus 2025 by CoinDesk. Joining me for this segment, we have Nate Allman. He's CEO of Ondo Finance. We're here to discuss why institutions continue to focus on tokenization and the significance of Ondo's partnership that was just recently announced. It is great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You got it. And Nate, let's talk about the overall trends that you're hearing at Consensus. What stands out this year?
I mean, certainly institutions are here, both with respect to participation in crypto native activities. More and more ETFs, beyond Bitcoin are coming online. And then, of relevance for us, more engagement in the real world asset tokenization space.
Yeah.
We just announced this morning our partnership with JP Morgan and Chainlink, where investors can now subscribe to our tokenized treasuries on Ondo chain and soon other public blockchains using tokenized bank deposits from JP Morgan's permissioned Connexus ledger. And, it's really the first time that these two worlds are coming together. And I think it's, an example of a lot of what's to come with respect to institutional engagement in the tokenization space.
So let's talk more about that. Why do you see increased adoption and more focus from institutions as it relates to tokenization?
There's a number of reasons. I mean, institutions have been involved for a long time in using blockchains to drive efficiency gains and cost savings for their own back office processes. So JP Morgan, for example, developed, permissioned blockchain ledger that they've been using to move, very large sums of cash intraday, used as repo collateral between other large banks. So institutions are not new to tokenization per se, but they are new to tokenization on public blockchains. And the business case there is a little bit different, right? We and most of us in the public blockchain world have been using tokenization to expand accessibility to real world assets. Stablecoins are a great example of this. There's more than $200 billion, worth of these dollar pegged assets today, held in large part by investors outside the US, particularly in emerging markets or crypto natives that don't have a lot of, traditional financial access. And we're expanding that with what we're doing with yield-bearing stablecoins, or we call them yield coins, tokenized treasuries. And then we're just going to continue doubling down on that. So institutions see the market here. There's a lot of wealth. There's a lot of people that they can now expand distribution of their products to. So I think those benefits, the efficiency and savings that institutions have been working on and the accessibility that we've been working on are starting to combine.
Yeah, they certainly are. What differentiates Ondo from other blockchains that are available?
Well, we both have our own blockchain where we are using it as an issuance hub where JP Morgan and other institutions can bring a traditional asset, bank deposit, security, et cetera, and then have it distributed to the broader public blockchain ecosystem. So it's not meant to compete with all of these other blockchains. It's really meant to facilitate broader distribution. And then we already have our assets on, 8, 9 different chains as well. So, we're really unique in being focused on bridging this divide between public blockchains and permission.
And this is where this concept of interoperability
That's right.
comes in, which has certainly increased over the past 2 to 3 years, let's call it. I'm also glad that you brought up that this is being leveraged by emerging markets. I think sometimes we tend to think very US or Western centric and think about it in terms of value or hedging or trading, when in fact there are billions of people around the world, for lack of legacy institutions, are using this to grow microeconomies, cross-border payments, alternative forms of raising capital. And that's really how the system's going to digitize and move forward, especially when you're thinking about liquidity as an example.
That's right. I mean, I think the easiest benefit of blockchain to understand is just expanding access, right? Bitcoin is the first digitally native bearer asset that could be held by anyone, anywhere, transferred 24/7, peer-to-peer. It's very, very easy to distribute. You don't have to onboard and create an account or anything like that. And I think it's that technology that we want to reapply to, publicly traded stocks, bonds, ETFs, treasuries like we're doing right now to promote just simple access to these folks in emerging markets. And it's not obvious to folks in the US who might say, like, why do I want to hold tokenized Apple instead of Apple? I can go to Robinhood and very easily get Apple. There's other benefits that the tokenized form may have in the future: 24/7 liquidity, the ability to use it in decentralized finance, to leverage very transparent, always on, lending and trading infrastructure. But for now, we're really focused on just expanding access outside the US.
Right, and that was my question to you. What's next for Ondo and the industry in particular, which you've already answered in terms of the industry? It seems as if once we get some more regulatory frameworks and some more visibility into that, it's not necessarily the products, but having that framework, that's when you start to see things at scale.
Yeah. So new assets and new market actors. I mean, it's still only treasuries and stable coins, in the real asset space. So, we announced a couple months ago at our summit in New York on Global Markets, our platform for bringing stocks, bonds, ETFs, anything you could buy at a Robinhood or a Fidelity today, you'll be able to buy outside the US in tokenized bearer form very easily. And then, as we saw this morning with JP Morgan, there's going to be, a great increase in particularly institutional market participants in these sorts of platforms.
Great. Appreciate the insight, Nate. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me from Consensus. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets